Yes, heroes, this is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. What an incredible day in the nation's capital. What an amazing day in Washington, D.C. as Donald Trump emerged victorious. President re-elect for the second term beginning today on the original day of inauguration, March the 4th. The biggest crowd ever, giant crowd, enormous, bigger than there's ever been, the biggest crowd that crowds have ever been. Never a bigger crowd. Full of enthusiastic crowds of uber patriots with their overcompensating flags and their overly insane loyalty wear. Yes, what a day. What a day indeed. Oh wait, that didn't happen. Sorry. Wrong script. That was the movie version. That was the QAnon version. I'm sorry. I got the wrong one. Oops. What happened? I was expecting a huge parade, a military type parade of all of the militias coming out of the woodwork with showing off their toys, all their prepper stuff. I really was. I was waiting for this incredible, this uprising of all of the derelicts and ding-dongs who were going to come out into the streets, and they were going to rise up their orange Mussolini, and it was going to be a great day. They were going to storm the Capitol. There were so many fun events planned. What happened? I was looking forward to getting the T-shirt. I was actually going to buy the hat, and nothing happened. Nothing. And in fact, the only thing that did happen is somehow we gave Congress, or at least the House of Representatives, a paid day off. And again, don't get me started on the whole we let these terrorists win by giving Congress a day off. Is that all it's going to take? Is the threat of, maybe there's some crazy people out there who are going to do some crazy things, so Congress go home for the day. It's nuts. But what happened? I actually had someone day before yesterday email me and say, you'll see. So I woke up this morning going, okay. I turned on the Twitters. I'm going, okay, let's go. I looked at some right-wing sites. I'm going, okay, let's see who carries Trump in on their shoulders. Let's see the parade. Let's see all of that stuff. I was looking forward to the throngs and the crowds and all of that, and, well, disappointed. Honestly. There was nothing, not even a firecracker that blew off. I was expecting, huge military-esque parades, cannons going off, blaring in the background, huge patriotic songs, and people singing, doing their, whatever the Q salute is. I don't know what it is. I've missed it. But here's the thing, and I'm being trying to be funny here, because sadly there are some people who believed that today that was going to happen. They woke up today and they're going to bed really disappointed. And this is where I struggle, because it's one thing to mock and it's one thing to make fun of them, but I know people who actually believed this was possible. And I don't know how we got here. I don't know how our understanding of how our government works got so broken. But we're in this moment now. So now I'm saying, okay, it's done. It didn't happen. There was no huge, Trump rising out of the ashes. None of that stuff. No second term. None of that stuff. Can we start talking in terms of sanity now? Can we start talking about how we get things done? And maybe come back to some bit of reality. I saw this story today about one of the people who got arrested on Insurrection Day, on the people who stormed our Capitol. And this is the guy who's been kind of famous. He's actually gotten some fame, a guy named Richard Barnett. He was the guy who thought it was okay. Guy from Arkansas, made it to D.C., found the directions. I guess Google Maps got him there. But he's the guy who was, famously threw his feet up on Nancy Pelosi's desk and was mugging it up for the camera and admitted, I think, to the New York Times that he stole envelopes off of the desk. Now, I don't know what was in them, but he stole from the office. He was in court today claiming that it's not fair that he's still in jail. and I could just see the pouty face and the stomping of the feet and the privilege that this guy, because he truly bought it. He was doing Trump's work. He truly bought that he was this uber patriot who was defending the freedom and the love of the Constitution. He truly bought it. And now he's like, oh, can I go home now? And they're like, no, this is serious. What you did is a serious crime. And I don't know how there's that disconnect of these people who went and destroyed our Capitol, defecated on our floor, leaked on people's desks, killed a police officer, beat hundreds others. And they thought, well, I can go home now. I'll get a slap on the wrist. That, my friends, incredible white privilege. And I'm generally, as a white guy, not somebody who throws out the white privilege thing too often. This, oh my gosh, major league. So he's yelling at the judge. Again, one of those things probably shouldn't do, but the kind of privileged position that they think they're entitled. You work for me, judge. Yeah, try. I hope he tries that line in the next hearing. But he claims that, the 7 counts that he was indicted on, he should be able to get out. And, I think about the guy, anytime I think of this stuff, I think of the guy in Philly, the black guy in Philadelphia, who stole 3 peppermint patties because he was hungry and spent, over 550 days in jail waiting for a hearing, just waiting for the hearing. I wonder what Mr. Barnett would be screaming then. And this is one of those moments where I'm hoping by seeing this that the others in the cabal, the others in the group of folks who honestly believed today was going to be inauguration day for Donald Trump, I hope they see this and they go, oh, I probably shouldn't do that. It's not that this guy's worthless. He serves as a bad example. Maybe I shouldn't follow in the paths of the guy from Arkansas, who is probably going to spend a good couple of years in jail over this. Although I know his president told him to do it, so he thinks he's going to get off. It's insane. And we're in this weird moment in history, here in the U.S. and globally, whereas this Freedom House group issues an annual report on democracy. And this is the 15th consecutive year that they've been doing this report, that the democracy is shrinking. The number of countries that are quote unquote free shrinking. And India, the latest one to go from free to partially free. And I started looking around at where we are in this moment. Because we have so many. Now, look, I am not in any way saying we need to have government crackdowns on these crackheads. I think we need them for fun and entertainment and to serve as bad examples. And we need to deal with them accordingly. But I in no way am saying we should be cracking down on journalists or cracking down on any of those things. But globally, we're having a fascistic kind of moment. And my fear is look, the fear is that we don't get the things that need to get done in the next year or two done, and that there's a rise of anger again, and we end up seeing someone worse than Trump with a Republican majority come in and make us less free. The very people who are screaming about freedom and screaming about liberty and all that stuff are the ones who are driving every call to limit that. And it's one of those weird kind of moments that we're in, where the very thing that you think you're fighting for is what you're causing to have happen. The very thing that you're trying to prevent is what you're actually accomplishing. So I'm hoping people will look at Mr. Barnett as the cautionary tale that he is, and I hope they throw him in jail for a long time. So the big news today, obviously, Vice President Kamala Harris broke the 50-50 tie in the Senate to move forward on the $1.9 trillion coronavirus rescue package. A 51-50 vote. Ron Johnson, being the Ron Johnson that he is, he has forced the Senate clerk to read all, I think it's 628 pages of it. And I think they claim that's going to take about 10 hours for them to read, and then there'll be, I guess, 20 hours for debate. What's interesting to me in this is that Johnson could read the bill himself. He could have his staffers read it. But they have this rule that they read on the floor in case it's kind of like a book on tape, only not on tape. Here's my problem. None of them were there. So Ron Johnson says, we got to read this. They got the staffers who are reading all 628 pages of this on the Senate floor. And then, within an hour, everybody leaves. And the only person that's left are the staffers who are reading to themselves. The idea of reading the bill into the record is so that the people, now look, they're reading it into the record, which they could have done with a click of a mouse. But it's supposed to be so that the Republicans hear it, so that the Democrats hear it. Understand what it is. It's another delay tactic. It's another thing that Republicans have done to slow this process down. And look, there's going to be a vote-a-rama coming. They're going to add a whole bunch of attempts to throw votes to make Democrats look bad, to justify, hey, why do we have to give local governments resources to stay open? Why do we have to give state governments resources to stay open? And look, they're going to take the most obscure things in there. And look, when you're talking about a 628-page spending bill of $1.9 trillion, even I can go, is that really necessary? And then I fall back onto, at this moment, yes. At this moment, we need to get money into people's hands. And you remember the last one, the big complaint was, they're giving money to the Kennedy Center for the Arts? How dare they? And you go, they need paychecks too. Those folks who work in that industry, they've got kids too. They've got mortgages too. During the Great Depression, FDR hired people to draw paintings, to take photographs. In fact, some of the greatest photographs we have, the Heinz photographs, which are all copyright free because our tax dollars paid for them, are some of the greatest documentations, some of the greatest bits of documentation of the Great Depression that we've got. Iconic photographs that we, the people, paid for. We paid people to go out and take photographs. That's all. They made a living off of going and documenting the struggles and the pain and the suffering of the American people. Now, I know Republicans would lose their mind over that. We can't have that. Oh my gosh, we don't want anyone to know in the future how badly this went and how the Republicans were against it. So what's going to happen, and expect this over the next day, you're going to hear a lot of grandstanding by the GOP, and the Democrats are going to be on the defense. And I'll tell you, they don't really have to be. For me, the idea of making sure that people have a little money in their pocket to be able to pay their bills is not a bad thing. And I would defend that. And yes, are we giving it to people who might not, be in dire needs right now? Yeah. But you know what that's going to be good for? It's going to be good for the demand that our economy doesn't currently have. And that demand will create jobs. So I can defend that, and I'm all in favor of it. For too long, we've had the working class of this country screwed over and in a stranglehold. And every time one of these crises happen, what are we told? What's the first thing we're told? Got to tighten the belt. Sorry, like we do at the kitchen table, got to tighten the belt. But at some point, don't you tighten the belt so tight till you cut off circulation? And that's where we are in this moment. And I am glad that Joe Biden, I am glad that the Democrats, I am glad that there are people who are saying, no, we need to ease things up for working people. And if that means some folks who might not be desperate at this moment get a little help and might, oh, heaven forbid, get a couple of weeks or a month ahead on their mortgage or their bills, or, hey, maybe new shoes for the kids. Not a problem with it. I think it's actually a good thing. We should do more of it. I say we go back, we tax those big corporations who are doing wildly well, because I know everyone's waiting for the big collapse of Wall Street, and we've had some ups and downs, but that's what Wall Street does. I had someone, the other day tell me, well, Biden's going to crash the economy, and it's going to be soon. I'm like, okay, well, if that happens, we'll see how we react to it. I know how the Republicans would act to it. They would be more than happy to bail out Wall Street, while telling you and me to what? Tighten our belts. And for too long, we've been tightening the belts, which is why I'm hoping that the Democrats do something big and bold that I know is not going to happen. I know we're not going to get the end of the filibuster. We're not going to get true democracy. But you got to fight the fights. And I'm hoping over this next day, as Democrats continue to be attacked by these Republicans, who clearly are not going to vote for the bill. All they're going to do over the next 30 hours is take shots. All they're going to do is attack. And then they're not going to vote for it, which is why I can't believe this has taken as long as it has. From the beginning, if I'm Chuck Schumer, I go, look, you're not coming along anyway. We're pushing it through. And it's got to be done soon. Or we're going to have real problems. And then on the heels of this, we need a big, chunky infrastructure plan. We need something big and bold and visionary. Something that's going to put people to work. Something that's going to catapult us into the 21st century. And something that we can leave our children our kids will look back and go, hey, they did something for us. Be that country that my great-grandparents and my grandparents' generation fought for. Leave our kids a better opportunity and a better thing than what we got. And that only comes with visionary leadership. And that only comes with people who are willing to put something on the line. So, Joe Manchin, some point, you got to come around. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, Michael Madowitz is going to be here, economist at the Center for American Progress. Going to talk about some of the job stuff, the outlook, and maybe a little bit on infrastructure. Stick around. Right back after this.
There's nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1989. That was the day machinists struck at Eastern Airlines. After bankrupting Continental Airlines to void union contracts there, the much-hated Frank Lorenzo hoped for a repeat at Eastern Airlines. Lorenzo bought Eastern with junk bonds and then bled the airline's profits dry to finance the debt of his holding company, Texas Air. 12,000 jobs were lost at Eastern in just 2 years under Lorenzo's leadership. Machinists had every reason to believe that wages would be cut in half in the next contract. In the weeks building up to the strike, management made its union busting clear by firing dozens of shop stewards at airports across the country. Machinists walked out at Miami Airport a month earlier over forced overtime. Nationwide, many complained that they were forced to work anywhere between 24 and 36 hours straight. 5 days into the strike, Lorenzo filed for bankruptcy. Picket lines were solid and the strike was popular. Many trade unionists joined the picket lines in support. The strike against Eastern symbolized a fight to take back everything lost during the Reagan years. The Airline Pilots Association and the flight attendants, organized by TWU, voted to walk out in solidarity. They stayed out for more than 8 months with the striking machinists. But when the pilots and flight attendants went back to work, it left the machinists isolated. Many argued that with contracts expiring at many airlines soon after the walkout, and industry-wide strike could only bolster chances for the machinists at Eastern to win. But by early 1991, the strike had become a devastating loss. Eastern ceased operations altogether in January, and its assets were liquidated.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So tomorrow we're expecting some job numbers to come out and figure out, hey, how are things looking? Don't get too excited. I'm not expecting great news, but the sky is not falling. And it's not, look, we're not supposed to be expecting good things at this point. Got to get through this pandemic first. And hopefully Congress gets that rescue package through to help people make it to the other side. And that's right now where my mindset is we got to make it through this mess. We got to get through the horrible that Joe Biden was left, the bad of this pandemic, and move after then. And here to share some thoughts on what we can expect tomorrow and maybe how we get out of the mess that we're in, I've asked Michael Madowitz to come talk with us. He's an economist with the Center for American Progress. AmericanProgress.org, their website. Michael, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you.
So what are we expecting tomorrow? I know that there's some. I've already heard conservatives going, Joe Biden's done horrible things. The economy's going to tank. It's going to be all bad. Joe Biden's ruined the economy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he was doing it at least a year ago or something. Yeah, I think it's one of those deals where I don't think anybody's really expecting things to look a whole lot different than the last month or two. I think that we're still looking at data that was collected in mid-February. So we were still pretty deep in lockdowns in most of the country. The good news is that right now, the public health data looks a lot better than it did when we were collecting the jobs data. But that also probably means the jobs data doesn't look nearly as good as we might hope it would if it were being collected today. I think overall, we're going to be looking at numbers that kind of say we're treading water. We're still going to have an unemployment rate that looks not that bad because tons of people are out of the labor force and not looking for jobs at all. And so it's going to kind of understate how bad things are. And we're going to keep adding jobs at a relatively tepid pace because frankly, you can't keep adding jobs when you have to have everything locked up. So I don't think we're going to see things that look like they're getting any worse, but I do think it's right for kind of all of us to be we can't just keep treading water at these numbers. I mean, there are 10 million fewer jobs than there were at this time last year. That's not okay. We can't stay there.
No, I'm right there with you. Which is why I keep saying we need to have this American Rescue Plan go through. We need to help people get through this phase of the pandemic, and maybe we get through this, and spring, early summer, we got to supercharge the economy with a major infrastructure bill to get some demand in the economy, and then get those people who aren't in the workforce back in the workforce and collecting a paycheck.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things that's going to be somewhat challenging in terms of you kind of already see this narrative breaking out of people saying we're going to do stimulus and overheat the economy and stuff. I mean, we're at a point where we could be adding 500,000 jobs a month for 2 years straight. And that would just get us out of the hole that we're in. That wouldn't get us anywhere ahead of where we were a year ago. And, we haven't added 500,000 jobs in a month in a while.
Right.
I think a standard month is somewhere around in normal times you are looking somewhere in the 100, 150, maybe 200,000. It's a big month. So if you do see 6 months in a row of adding 4 times that many jobs, I think people are going to sort of reflexively kind of freak out about that. And it's important for us to keep in mind there's sort of the levels that we're at and how fast we're changing. And given the level we're at, we need to be changing pretty fast to start making up the lost ground.
Yeah, even if we were to add 500,000 jobs a month, we need at least half of that to keep up with demographic growth, just to stay even. So even at 500,000, we're not getting that far ahead.
No. I mean, you would need a lot of I mean, in the before times, we would have thought 500,000 jobs a month was like a crazy good month, but you're going to need a really long stretch of those before you're anywhere near like the point where we're running out of workers or something. I think it's important to get to those kind of numbers like as early as we can, because while it's like unbelievably important to get people who are out of work back into work, like we're not going to start seeing broad-based wage growth until we can sort of, get the economy back to the point where employers are like, oh yeah, I do actually need to raise my pay to find somebody to work for me. And there aren't like 10 million people who will sign up for this. So, I think it's important that we get this going as fast as we can.
Well, which is why the Republicans right now are saying we can't extend unemployment. We can't give the extra. What Biden wanted was 400. What Manchin is demanding is 300. We can't give that because those lazy people will stay home and they won't take the jobs.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like if jobs are paying 300 a week, then they probably won't take that job. But my hope would be that we're doing better than that with at least most of the jobs we're bringing back.
No, I mean, their argument is we need desperate people to take desperate jobs. Basically, that's my point. But I'm looking at the American Rescue Plan, which, I've had a lot of listeners say, 1.9 trillion is just way too much, Michael, way too much money. As an economist, when you look at that number, do you go, that's, too much, too little, just right? Where do you put that number?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that comes up whenever we end up talking about like a budget thing, because eventually everything in a budget gets scored into a single number, and it's like, so it's 1.9 trillion, and like, I don't know, like there's a very big difference between spending at 1.9 trillion in a month and spending 1.9 trillion in like 2 to 4 years or something, right? So, I mean, if you're spending 1.9 trillion in a month, like that would be like a massive amount of spending. If you're spending 1.9 trillion over like 2 years, like that's like 100 billion a month. That's not nothing, but it's also not the kind of thing where you're like totally swamping the rest of the economy. Like you would expect that would boost things like maybe, on the order of like 10% or something. But like, again, we're at a point where like we have an awful lot of excess capacity, and spending a lot of money when you have a lot of excess capacity is like, I mean, it's the textbook example of what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing I keep saying. We got to keep the economy from getting worse. This is one of those defensive measures, in my view. Keep it from collapsing, because collapsing is much harder to come back from than just a downturn. We don't want collapse.
Yeah, I mean, and on some level, I think this is kind of like why a lot of people are sort of grasping at straws, and why you see people sort of like reflexively going to sort of the the standard playbook, because if you'd asked me this like 2 years ago, it was like, well, if we're going to have a recession, are we really going to need like $2 trillion to get out of it? I would have said probably not if we do this right, because we would have reacted to a recession as soon as it happened, and we would have been like quick and slowed the fall. But that's not the recession we had. We had a recession where we really did need to do like a whole lot less economic activity to keep people healthy. And so, in some of it, we're building back from a much lower level than I think any of us have really thought about I mean, like, I can remember 10 years ago when we were like, oh my God, this is like the worst recession we're ever going to see. And this has been so much worse than that, I think that's one reason that you are seeing like really broad support among the sort of nerdy economist people who normally would be like clutching pearls at spending this much money. It's like, yeah, no, we should spend this money. We need to spend this now because we're building back from a much lower level.
Yeah, I mean, and the other part of it is the thing that gets me is the political part of this is you've got the Mitch McConnells of the world and that side of the fence saying, no, we can't bail out those blue states by giving money to the states and to the local governments. When you've got Republican governors and mayors going, no, we need that to stay afloat. And this is where the politics really, really gets in the way. And I know everything is political, but you would think, and this is one of those hard things for me, you would think in the middle of a global pandemic, while the country is still in turmoil, that you'd come around at least on the giving free money away part. That seems popular to me.
Yeah, it does seem like people like free money. I mean, I think the irony of the blue state bailout thing from like Mitch McConnell in particular is, if you go look at the states that have had the biggest cuts in government jobs, like Kentucky is right up there at the top. I think like Wisconsin maybe is beating it, or at least was a month or two ago, in terms of like the percent of their public workforce that's been cut back. But like overall, it's about 6% of public jobs have been lost in the last year. That's 1 in 20 people in every school. That's crazy. We need to get these people back. I mean, we need to get these people back if we were running school under like normal circumstances, but we're not. We're running it under circumstances where we need like more staff and more distance and more protective equipment and stuff. So, I mean, the state and local government stuff, I don't quite understand why that's been such a controversial thing. Cause like you say, it's, this is like, you do basic arithmetic and it comes out pretty quick.
Well, it's because we're going to bail out those teachers unions. And that's the default answer I get from every conservative who goes, we can't give states money because they're just going to bail out those overpaid, lazy teachers.
Yeah, right. The same overpaid, lazy teachers who were like going on strike 2 years ago because they were like, wait, we haven't gotten a raise in this whole recovery for the last decade. So, yeah, I mean,
don't let the facts get in the way.
Yeah. I mean, I will say like I don't particularly like letting the political get in the way of things. I think that, whoever decided that whatever rescue package this was going to be 1.9 trillion instead of 2 trillion was being political and somewhat smart about it, because it's obviously harder for the same party that 2 years ago did a $1.9 trillion tax cut that was strongly targeted at corporations and the wealthiest Americans to be like, yeah, we couldn't possibly spend 1.9 trillion on like keeping the economy going while, we're getting through the hopefully last leg of this like huge pandemic.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that happens. And I'm hoping the American Rescue Plan goes through. I'm hoping they figure out their problems and we get that through by the end of the month, give people a boost, keep the economy up a little bit and keep people in the jobs that they have. And then I'm really hopeful for an infrastructure plan because, infrastructure, again, was another one of those non-political things. I have friends who were former congressmen, back in the 90s, and they would say it was a yawn vote. You went in, you got your projects to take home so you could have your ribbon cutting ceremonies. And it was great. That's how you made your bones. Now getting an infrastructure plan through is like, well, almost as hard as giving free money away.
Yeah, that one has definitely surprised me. I mean, my only correction to what you said so far is like, I want this package done well before the end of the month, right? Like we have unemployment benefits expiring a week from Sunday. So I would rather they got that done like, today if they could.
Right.
But, I think that also goes to like when unemployment benefits are expiring in like a week, like you need to get that done now. And then I think it's really clear that we needed infrastructure week for at least 4 years has been the joke. Probably a lot longer than that. So, yeah, I think like we need to get this thing done now.
Yeah. No more infrastructure.
And then we also need to, I think we need to get this package done now. And then we need to like do a real infrastructure thing, but like actually do it. Don't just, make infrastructure week jokes. Like let's build some stuff.
I don't ever want to see another infrastructure week. I don't. I just want to see you do some work, get some work done. I don't want to see photo ops. I want to see bills with money that move towards projects so that the roads outside my house are paved and I don't have to have my car, the alignment done every year, every 6 months. I would like to go over a bridge and not pray that I get to the other side. I'd like to turn on my computer and go, oh, the broadband actually works now. I'd like those things, please.
Yeah. I mean, I think that infrastructure week should take, if you've ever driven along a road that has needed infrastructure work, it's not a week. But
I'm in Pennsylvania.
I'm fine with things with infrastructure 6 months. Let's cut all the ribbons you want, do all the photo ops you want, but let's actually do it.
Yeah, I'm in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has the worst roads in the country. Ask any truck driver. Rated the worst roads. We've got probably the most structurally deficient bridges of any state in the country. We got a lot of work that needs to be done, and a real, true, honest infrastructure bill could really put people back to work in this state and grow our economy, not just with the people who get the jobs from the construction jobs to build that stuff, but all of the small businesses and all the people that are employed around that, because construction workers generally make a really good living, especially if we strengthen prevailing wage laws to make sure that they're paid reasonably and compensated for their work. To me, that's what we need to be doing right after the rescue plan.
Yeah, I mean, like we definitely don't want our infrastructure built on the cheap. We've seen what that looks like. I will point out that some of my in-laws in Tennessee and some of my friends in Michigan will like go to the mat to say they have worse infrastructure situations than you guys do in Pennsylvania. But like, I think the fact that like pretty much everywhere you go, people are like, oh no, ours is the worst. This is like a pretty clear indication that like nobody doesn't need infrastructure week, month, year, decade. This is, I'm sort of with you on the like, I've scratched my head a lot. I don't want it to bleed, but I just don't quite understand why we can't do this.
No, it's crazy to me because, one of the things that I really agreed with Donald Trump on, and people ask me, well, you always hated Donald Trump. I go, yeah, I did. He was a terrible president. But there were some things I agreed with him on. I agreed that we have to do something about China, absolutely. And I agree we need a big, chunky, large infrastructure bill. And he was talking at one point something like $2 trillion that he was going to pull out of somewhere. I'm like, yes, that please, let's do that. I think if he'd have done that instead of going after the healthcare, or that instead of going after giving more rich people more money, I think he'd have won hands down.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the electoral expert in my house, but I gotta say, like, I think it's, there's nowhere in America you can go where people are like, we have too much infrastructure. And like, if you ask, people around the world, like what is the infrastructure situation? Like the only place that people say is overbuilt with infrastructure is China. And so, I think we can complain about all the things that China's doing all we want, but like, we can also like start to do things that they're beating us at. And like, this would be one of the easiest ones we could do. And it would also, by the way, like create a ton of jobs that literally have to be in America.
Yeah. And I would like to do it here, please. Again, I don't need the Chinese to build the San Francisco Bay Bridge again, because they did a crummy job of it from everybody I'm asking about. I'd like us to build all of the things here, make the concrete here, all of the steel, all that stuff that we put into our own infrastructure. Just seems like a good idea. Last question I've got for you, because, a lot of the jobs numbers that we're going to coming out tomorrow, what are you going to be paying attention to see, who's the winner, who's the loser, how this shakes out with the numbers tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, there haven't been a lot of winners lately. I think like it's been going better than we had hoped for manufacturing in particular. And I think that's just sort of, when you can't spend money on anything but things that you can order from a manufacturer, there are more manufacturing jobs than others. But, we've just seen like women in particular have been like really decimated by this recession. We know, I mean, like even the mothers who haven't lost jobs, they're not exactly living the dream right now. We're sort of, I mean, at least like, I think where we're looking for the most is sort of families that are down on income and really do need the work and hopefully
the money from the rescue plan will help them as well. But Michael, I appreciate the time, the thoughts, good stuff as always. Look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, man, it's been a pleasure. How are you going?
Good stuff. Michael Madowitz, economist there at the Center for American Progress. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
Sinking of the Titanic. The International Seamen's Union was demanding changes to the working conditions at sea. The job of a seaman required long times away from home and tough physical labor. The workers had few rights. The union found a friend in Senator Robert La Follette of Wisconsin. He championed a new law that set guidelines for basic safety and decent working conditions for those who sailed under the American flag. The act set the work week at a maximum of 56 hours. It established holidays for non-essential crew. The law also improved working conditions by setting standards for cleanliness and safety on board. It abolished the practice of jailing seamen that tried to desert the ship. It required that seamen be paid half of their wages during the voyage. The practice then to withhold wages to ensure the workers did not desert the ships at port. The new law also required that 16 square feet of space be given to each worker for sleeping. It also mandated that ships should have adequate lifeboats. These last two provisions angered the ship owners. because it meant there would be less space on board for cargo. Finally, the law gave seamen the right to organize into unions. Senator La Follette described the negative reaction of the owners to his law by observing, already the masters of the seas are beginning to threaten dire vengeance. The act was a major victory for the rights of labor on the high seas. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as we talked about the other day, big win out in Montana, and big thumbs up to the labor movement of Montana to fight off the No Rights at Work agenda. Again, part of the ALEC, the National Right to Work Committee playbook. All of the hat trick of horrible, as I call it, pushing the right wing platform of right to work. Allowing people to opt out of their unions whenever they want, and stopping the employer from deducting the dues, which is just insane to me. But good on the folks there, and that's why I've reached out to Erin Foley. Erin's the Secretary Treasurer of Teamsters Local 2 out in Montana. Erin, thanks for taking time for us.
Yes, absolutely. It's great to be here.
So big congratulations to you and the rest of the union folks there in Montana. And let's start with how'd you beat this horrible back?
Well, it took a lot of strategic planning because we also have the pandemic going on. So there was a lot of crazy rulemaking that occurred in the beginning where we didn't even know if we'd be able to testify in person. And there was also they were going to cut us off on testifying on Zoom. They could just hit mute and be done with us. So we had to work behind the scenes a lot. So we gathered with the AFL and all the other unions in Montana and came up with how we were going to message it and how we were going to get it to our members. So each union worked strategically on our own, but we were all sending the same message at the same time to try to, motivate our members. And that was one of the big things out of this huge right to work push, is that we got all of our members motivated and active. So really it was a driving force from these bad bills, uniting the unions together and getting people more active in it. But the messaging, we did Zoom meeting updates, hustle messages. So it was really trying to figure out how to engage, even though we couldn't be in person most of the time.
No, and you guys did incredible work. And I know when people think of a strong labor movement, and they think, New York or California or Pennsylvania or Michigan, they don't necessarily think Montana, but boy, you guys really stepped up, and good on you. Now I understand this is part of, now that you have a Republican governor, I guess first time that's happened in 16 years, this is now fully on the table. And I wasn't surprised to see it come up, but I'm interested. Did this come up during the campaign as Greg Gianforte was running? Was this something that was what the voters actually, even thought about?
It was nothing that he was ever asked, to my knowledge, but it was something that his lieutenant governor did come out and say on the campaign trail that if right to work hit his desk, he would sign it. There would be no veto pin. So we definitely lost the veto pin of the last 16 years of the governors. Even the Republican governors still didn't want the right to work to go through. But yeah, the last 16 years have been easy because we knew we had the veto pin if it got that far.
Yeah, I mean, it's this is one of those cautionary tales where I'm at in Pennsylvania, because you go back to 2010 when Scott Walker ran in Wisconsin. It was never brought up, yet it was one of the very first things that they pursued because it is a Republican priority. And I know here in Pennsylvania in 2022, when the next gubernatorial race is up, that this is going to be a question I hope is asked often, because I know it will be a priority of that Republican governor. So let me ask you this, because you guys were able to pull a lot of Republicans onto your sides, and this is almost one of the core central tenets of what the Republican Party stands for today. How did you pull Republican members over to vote against this?
I think our Montana has extremely long labor history. We've had unions since back in the 1900s. It's where, it was founded when the mining and all of that happened. And I think almost everyone in Montana seems to either be related to somebody that was in a union or, belong to a union themselves at some point in their life. So it's in our blood, for a lot of us. And the Republicans that, were on our side, a lot of them were union members. So, we have a lot of union members that are Republican in our own local. So I think it's just trying to find, the middle ground of where you're paying for a membership into something that provides a service, and trying to get that message across to all party lines of, we're here representing workers, and that's all we're doing.
Now, I find it interesting because one of the videos that I saw of the sponsor of House Bill 251 is a guy named Representative Caleb Hinkle. He's the guy. This was his baby, or it was what he got from the National Right to Work Committee that he slapped his name on. And I'm not saying which one it was. I'm just saying that it's possible. Evidently, he recently stood up and said what was really on his mind. It really wasn't about anything other than just Machiavellian politics and goring your enemy in public. And fortunately, your folks shot him down.
Yes. Yeah, it was, he worked in a deli, he said, and he said, he was going to get terminated because he didn't pay the initiation fees, but he went to the union meetings and all of these things. But then he had to lose his job because of the unions. And while it wasn't, he has the right to work. He has the right to work wherever he wants. If he doesn't want to work in a union position, he left and he went and got a union or a non-union deli job and solved the problem. So yeah, he did some grandstanding and did some, you could just see where he was just on this political kick to come right at the unions and try to take something away from us. But the other thing, when he was presenting the bill, he couldn't answer the questions and would defer to the out-of-state political people that were there to answer all of the questions.
Yeah, so let me ask you that, because I saw that was something that happened. How much influence do you think came from the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, and the National Right to Work Committee? How much of this push is their doing and their money?
They had, out of the 12 proponents, 8 of them were out of state for Americans for Prosperity. So they were. Yeah, so they all of the proponents besides the 12 or besides the 4 weren't even from Montana. So they spoke and testified on every right to work bill that we had.
Yeah, and look,
and then really the 4 that spoke on this one only talked about they were ranchers and stuff, so they didn't even really have businesses that it was being affected by.
Yeah, which is interesting, because you would think that the ranchers are the get government out of my life people, and this is one of those moments where when I talk about right to work, it's why would you want to put the government in between what you and your employer can agree to? You and your employer can agree to whatever you want. You're having the government say you cannot agree that the people in that place are going to pay dues and be members, which is insane to me that I have conservatives telling me this because they somehow think it's about choice and freedom, and it's really not.
Right, exactly. If I join a gym, I pay them a membership. We have this contract that says I can come in and use their equipment and their classes and all of this stuff and what I get for my membership. But when you pay, you don't want to pay into the union to get the same benefits and the wages and the schedules and the seniority rights and everything else. You just want it for free and think that it's just crazy to me. I'm like, you pay a membership for everything else, but when it comes to this, it's their freedoms are being taken away and their rights are being taken away. No,
you're absolutely right. But the one thing that they do masterfully, and I have to give the right credit, I have to give the anti-worker people credit, is they have nice messaging. Right to work sounds nice. It sounds like, hey, I should have the right to work. Mm-hmm. And you don't have either. You don't have any rights or any work, which is kind of the weird scenario in this. When you actually sit down and explain it like I did to my kids, they're like, well, why would I want, that sounds dumb, Dad. And I think when you take those moments and you really explain exactly like Mr. Hinkle did today, or saying, it's really about, crushing those unions. It's not about the insurance or any of that other stuff. It's really about going after our enemies.
Right. Yeah. It was laid out as a direct attack at us because they wanted, come between us and the employer and the employee's right to collectively bargain for better rights. And it was amazing that the attack that they were pushing on us. And they hit us with bills every which way.
Yeah. I want to get to some of the other ones because the hat trick of horrible outside of this right-wing no rights at work legislation also would be to open up people's ability to withdraw from the union in the public sector. Thanks to Janice, we've created an environment where we have a national no rights at work agenda that's gone on, where you have the right to freeload, but if you sign up, you sign your union card once a year, you got the chance to get out. That seems sane and rational. They wanted to open up to more than that. What do you say to the person who goes, well, I should be able to leave whenever I want?
Right. And I'm fine if you want to leave and you don't want to pay the fees. That's fine, but also you should not get any of the benefits that were negotiated for that. So I mean, if that's what you want to leave and go and do, that's great. But also you now should have to bargain and negotiate with the employer on your own, and good luck with that. Because that's what they want. But the employers also don't want to have 50 individuals that are in a bargaining unit and then, 20 individuals that aren't, and then they have to negotiate with them separately every time.
Yeah. No, I've often said, look, if you don't want to be a member, you don't have to be a member, but you do have to pay for the representation you get. I'm not even willing to go as far as you are, and you're very gracious in saying that you won't get our benefits. I say you don't get anything because you can't be here. I'm an advocate of the closed shop because I don't know how you do that. And I don't see how it's possible other than ripping a workplace apart and causing the divisions that the right to work people want. They want us at each other's throats so that we're not focused on them. And the more that they pit us against one another, the less wages we get, the less benefits we get, the less of all of that we get. And it's bared out over the last 30 years as union density has declined, as our standard of living. So for me, that's a huge part of it. The other thing that they tried to push through is probably one of my favorite anti-union attacks on the public sector, which is, we just can't allow the state or the employer to deduct the dues from your paycheck because it's a free service to you somehow. We're giving you an in-kind contribution, which is hysterical.
Right.
But I'm curious, before I get into my punchline, I'm curious your thoughts on it.
Yeah, so that was one of the things we made sure we got to the legislators, the representatives that were on our side. 350 companies or 350 deductions are allowed in the state of Montana, and they wanted to take one deduction and say, no, it's not allowed. You can't deduct to your union, but you can deduct to United Way, you can deduct to your gym membership, you can do all of these other things, but no, we can't do this because it's costing us money, and it's unfair to the employer to have to do this, service for the union.
Did anyone ask how much? Because I asked the state legislator, I said, how much does it cost for one person to write that code? Because I'll reach into my pocket and I'll pay you right now for the whole labor movement. How much?
Right. Yeah. No, they never said.
And then the other part
money was attached to it.
Then the other part of this, as someone who has been in negotiations and kind of understands a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit how this works, isn't this one of those things that you bargain over?
Yes, absolutely. I had an employer a couple years ago that said, okay, well, yeah, we'll let dues deduction in our contract, but you got to pay $2 extra because it costs us money to, send the envelope and do all, deduct the money from their checks and stuff. And the members were like, absolutely, it's less hassle out of mine. And I was like, $2 per the 40 members that are there way more exceeds the amount of money that's going to take them to deduct the money out of your check once a month. Again,
it's one of those things that you negotiate. That's how that goes. Yeah. And this is why I don't want government between the employer and the employee. I want them to hammer out a deal. I want the government to be there as the arbiter, make sure everything's fair, make sure you duke it out in the same ring. But I don't want them involved.
Right. No, exactly. They have no business in between it. They shouldn't be there.
Yeah, but again, I'm thrilled to see Montana come out on top of this. I think this is a fabulous thing, and I'm hoping that the folks in Pennsylvania and other states like Ohio and Illinois, that they take this as well and go, hey, you know what? Maybe it's okay for Republicans to vote against this hat trick of horrible. Maybe it's okay for workers to have rights. I do want to get your thoughts though on President Joe Biden's statement on Sunday. For me personally, that's probably the most pro-union statement I've heard in my lifetime from a sitting president. I'm curious your thoughts.
I think it was amazing. Yeah, we've never heard somebody in that realm come out and support unions as much as he has. And I think it's fantastic, and I think it's something that hopefully will turn the labor movement around and get us going back in the right direction. and, helping these employees with these employers that, do bad business.
No, because
and
where I'm
don't take
hopeful,
care of
Erin,
them.
is I'm hoping that, and I'm encouraged by what happened in Montana. I really am, that there were some Republicans who stepped forward and said, this is too far. I'm hoping Republicans across the country take notice and say, you know what? Those are our constituents too, because a large number of union members are Republican voters. I'm hoping that this stops becoming the political football that it's become, and that workers' rights are universal, and we should be pushing forward for everybody.
Agreed. It was truly a bipartisan effort in order to achieve what we did in Montana. And the biggest thing is stay out of our labor rights, stay out of our union. Like we want our union rights, and we don't need you guys interjecting in it at all. So it was really just even, reaching out to all of our members, Republican and Democrat, saying this is not a Republican and Democrat. This is bipartisan. This is actually no, political affiliation whatsoever. These are your collective bargaining rights that we're fighting for, and making sure that you guys, get what you deserve, and that we can take care of it.
No, I'm really encouraged, and I'm hoping at the end of this month to see something positive come out of Bessemer, Alabama. Any words for the workers at the Amazon plant in Bessemer?
Oh, just stay strong. Don't listen to the attacks from the employers. Don't listen to their false promises where they're telling you you'll have, higher wages and better health insurance and everything else, because they're full of shit. It's not happening. Sorry.
Oops. Where's
Yep.
the FCC? Uh-oh. No, I'm right there with you, and I'm hoping that the message from Joe Biden gets loud and clear to them that the government, our federal government, is there behind them and not against them. And I think it was the perfect timing for Biden to come out and say that. He didn't say which way to go. He's just saying vote your conscience, vote your choice. But no one should harass you. No one should be able to do the things that employers have gotten away with, as you know more better than anyone, far too often.
Exactly. Yeah. The NLRB is there to make sure that they are, everything is ran smoothly and clearly, and that the employer and the union are both doing their jobs. So yeah, that they need to be able to vote. They need to vote how they want without the fear of retaliation or intimidation or any of that sort of stuff. And that's their right. They get to have that. Do we want to be in a bargaining unit or not?
Yeah. How thrilled were you on Inauguration Day that Peter Robb got fired?
So thrilled. Even whether or not they could figure out if it was legal or not, it was the most amazing thing ever, because the rules that have been hammered down on the union since he was in place have been just awful.
Yeah, seeing him fired in the most unceremonious of ways as an at-will employee, just as the guy who was, partially behind the firing of the Patco workers back during the Reagan years, there was just something symbolic and very satisfying about seeing him canned. And his number two, 5 o'clock on day one, that's why I voted for him.
Oh, absolutely. Same here. Yeah, because I knew Biden was going to take care of the union workers.
Yep, good stuff. Erin,
Yep.
I appreciate you taking time for us. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rick.
Fabulous. Erin Foley, Secretary Treasurer, Teamsters Local 2 there in Montana. Make sure you check out the work they do. We'll get links out. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1933. This was the day that Franklin Roosevelt named Frances Perkins Secretary of Labor. Secretary Perkins was the first woman to hold a cabinet position in the United States government. Perkins brought to her position years of experience advocating for working people. Born in Boston, Perkins attended Mount Holyoke College. She moved to Illinois to become a school teacher. She began spending time at the renowned Hull House Settlement House. At Hull House, Perkins encountered some of the leading fighters for women's rights and workers' safety, while learning from many of the leading labor reformers of her day. From Illinois, Perkins returned east to study economics and sociology, earning her master's degree from Columbia University in New York City. Soon, Perkins became the head of the National Consumers League. While in New York, Perkins witnessed firsthand the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire tragedy. She watched watched as 146 young girls and women jumped to their deaths to escape the deadly flames because the doors of the factory were chained shut. The experience profoundly affected Perkins. She would later say the New Deal began on March 25, 1911, the day the Triangle factory burned. She spent the rest of her career working to ensure the conditions that led to the Triangle fire would not be repeated. Perkins played a key role in crafting many parts of Roosevelt's New Deal legislation, including the passage of the Social Security Act. She also worked to pass the National Labor Relations Act, which allowed millions of workers to earn collective bargaining rights for the first time. During her 12 years as Labor Secretary, Perkins forged new ground for the role of women in government as a staunch ally for working people. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
There is a weasel word that politicians use whenever something goes wrong on their watch. Unacceptable. We just heard it slither out of the mouth of Texas Governor Greg Abbott in response to the state's failure to prepare for a killer winter storm. What happened this week to our fellow Texans is unacceptable, he fumed. Well, yes, Gov, but wait, aren't you the guy in charge? Ignoring that little detail, Abbott pointed his outrage at ERCOT, an agency charged with administering electric policy in Texas. But wait again. Those policies are set by the Public Utility Commission, a corporate cozy body that has failed for years to mandate that the state's for-profit utilities weatherize their power generators to prevent freeze-ups. And who appointed the members of that commission? Why, Greg, it was you. In fact, 2 of the 3 members of PUC are former top staffers of the governor. Also, Abbott has been governor for 6 years, and not once has he proposed legislation to require that the corporate owners of electric utilities protect the grid from freezes, as is commonly done in North Dakota and other sub-zero icy places. But, he claims, this year's storm was unprecedented, so it couldn't have been anticipated. Oops, wait again. A notorious rolling grid failure in a 2011 snowstorm left millions of Texans in deadly darkness, a disaster that was also called unacceptable. But then Abbott and other GOP officials did accept it, quietly refusing to require winterization, even as they accepted big campaign donations from those corporate giants that caused the breakdown. Yet, we're now treated to the clownish spectacle of Abbott demanding a legislative investigation and calling for heads to roll. This is Jim Hightower saying, but wait once again, isn't he head number 1? Stay in touch. Sign up for the Lowdown's free weekly email. Did I say free? Yes. Get yours at hightowerlowdown.org/email.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So here to give some thoughts on the big inauguration today. The big crowd, the enormous crowd, biggest crowd ever. Even bigger than the first inauguration. I've asked our good friend Sarah Burris, reporter over at Raw Story, who actually lives in D.C., was able to watch the event unfold in front of her very eyes. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
It was so big. It was huge.
How big was it?
It was 4 people.
And how was the speech?
He didn't show up. I was really saddened by that. I thought for certain that Donald Trump would forego the golf course and toddle up to the land of Washington for his big day. And alas, it didn't happen. It was like waiting for Godot. These poor people, being like, let's go. And then they didn't move.
Did they at least send the golden big boy with the magic scepter in his place?
No, they didn't even do that. That was what was so sad is, there wasn't an inflatable Trump. There was nothing. But what's interesting that I did notice about today is there was a huge contrast between January 6th and March 4th. On January 6th, there were obviously tons and tons of people, huge insurrection at the Capitol. Today, nothing happened. The one difference between those two things is there's no Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So, this whole idea that the Senate Republicans were like, oh, he didn't do this. Like, well, if he didn't, then why didn't it happen again today on March 4th?
It's an excellent point. And he didn't have Twitter, and evidently not getting YouTube back, according to the CEO of YouTube, until the risk of violence has decreased, according to her. And I don't know when that's going to be, but when she said when there's no longer an elevated risk of violence, we'll lift the suspension then.
No, never. What was interesting today is he sent out a kind of statement, I guess, like a press release statement that attacked the Wall Street Journal for an article, for their op-ed that they did like days ago. And it's like, oh, you've been relegated to press releases.
But he did get Karl Rove, Turd Blossom trending on Twitter. He did do that.
I guess it's the little things in life. Or in Karl Rove's case, the squishy things.
The squishy things, yes. It's crazy. But the one positive thing that did come out of today, the House of Representatives got a free day off. They didn't have to go to work today.
Yeah, they did work all through the night, which would be really boring to me. And interestingly, what happened in the middle of the night, I don't know if you saw this, but one of the Texas representatives, one of the new guys, voted, I guess, in support of the George Floyd bill. And at the point that he voted for it, I guess he then just walked off the floor, and you see some dude in a suit. It wasn't Louis Gohmert, because I can always see his big shiny bald head from the back. It was some dude in a navy blue suit who just came flying down the aisle and up to the well. And I guess what happened is they, 3 different Republicans thought that that the Republicans shouldn't have voted for the bill. And so they tried to change it. And you can't. You obviously, like, if the member is going to change their vote, they can, change it. Or in the last several minutes of a vote, you have to use what's called a red card, and you have to sign your name and give it directly to the clerk.
Right.
And there were 3 different Republican members trying to forge this guy's name to change his vote. And I don't understand, like, he just voted, like, just text the guy. And it didn't even really, the bill passed. It wasn't going to pass or fail based on this one guy's vote. So it's just like, why just change it after? Like, nobody cares. Nobody's awake. Nobody's watching this. So that was a weird sort of evening, but they passed a lot of good legislation last night, much to the Republicans' chagrin.
Yeah, of which none is going to pass the Senate.
Yes.
And that's the frustrating part, and that's the frustrating part of why Joe Manchin drives me crazy.
Yeah, and I would say too, Kristen Sinema, this is a big thing. Is like, thanks guys for totally screwing democracy.
And also, honestly, quite frankly, giving the Republicans a chance in 2024.
Yeah, absolutely. Because now the Republicans can campaign on this idea that Democrats didn't deliver on everything that they promised whenever they had power, and it's like, well, the fact that you need 60 people to get something passed is not what the Constitution, what the founders had in mind.
Yeah. Let's talk about Senate votes. Ron Johnson back in the news, making the clerks, the staffers read the bill. They say that's going to take about 10 hours at least. And interestingly enough, none of the senators stuck around to listen.
I'm so shocked. I wonder if Ron Johnson stuck around to listen.
For about an hour.
I'm pretty sure he hasn't read the whole thing. There were a couple of people online who were like, can we send the clerk tea? Like, is there some way that we can do something nice for the clerk? Because this is just a staffer. This is not, if you're going to be kind of an ass about the whole thing, then filibuster and read it yourself. It's like green eggs and ham for Ted Cruz.
And right there is the filibuster that I'm in favor of. If it means that much, get the 628 pages and start reading through until you got to go to the bathroom. And if if you want to bring a jug with you, you can go right there. But the reality is, if you want to filibuster, that's the way I think a filibuster should be done. Not, oh, hey, well, we've decided we're not going to let this go further. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, the threat of a filibuster is what has just caused so many problems. And I think, too, if the members really, if this is something that they really care about, if this is something that, they want to fight for or against and do a filibuster, I think that's what democracy calls upon them to do. This is something where they should be able to convey to the American public why they support or don't support this bill and, talk about it for as long as they want. But yeah, look, it's thanks Joe Manchin for making everything, and Kristen Sinema for making everything suck. It would make really good TV, if we had Republicans sitting up there trying to justify why they're not going to give us, our stimulus money.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's incredible. And none of these Republicans are going to vote for it anyway.
Yeah.
They didn't vote for it to
care.
go forward anyway. Kamala Harris had to vote, make the 51st vote. So there's not going to be a Republican vote for it anyway.
Which is insane because it's, 75 or 77% of the American public wants this?
Yes. I mean, they're literally giving out free money. They're literally handing out money. I cannot think of anything more popular than going, we're just going to give you money.
Right? And you would think that this would be something that Republicans could get behind because they really supported giving away free money to corporations.
Yeah.
To the tune of $2 trillion. So why can't it happen for everyday Americans who, are either lost their jobs in the pandemic or trying to make it through, have medical bills? Like that's the next big crisis we're going to deal with, right? Is that once we're out of the pandemic, all the people who went to the hospital who have now a pre-existing condition and have to deal with all kinds of like lung issues, heart issues, and the after effects of having COVID, plus their medical bills.
Yeah.
It's so disgusting.
Now, Ron Johnson's whining, he's whining that he's now target number one because he's in a vulnerable seat and he keeps doing dumb stuff like on 4th of July going to Russia. Like making the staffers read a bill he's not going to vote for or ever vote for. A ton of stuff, like defending Donald Trump and all of the things that were going on and stoking those fires. Yeah, of course he's target number one.
And it's funny, too, because there are actual issues that people have to deal with. The American public is having a crisis right now. We have a jobs crisis. We have an economic crisis where people are worried about losing their homes or being kicked out of their apartments. And Ron Johnson is playing the, oh, poor me, everybody hates me. Like, yeah, everybody does hate you because it's not about you. It's about us. It's about the American people. And you're basically turning this into some big, political game and making it all about your poor, sad, life and your politics whenever it has nothing to do with that. So I don't know if he's going to run for re-election in 2022. But by God, he's going to spend the next 2 years playing the victim.
Yeah. Oh, well, that is the Republican way, is it not?
It is the Republican way. There is nothing that they love more than all of a sudden being triggered by, somebody saying that they were talking like a Neanderthal.
Yeah. No, they
God
love nailing
forbid.
themselves to the cross, don't they?
And my favorite tweet today, go look up Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio defending Neanderthals. It's just like, that is the best self-own I have ever seen. I thought it was a joke. I was like, this isn't real. This cannot possibly be real. There's
nothing that surprises me anymore, Sarah. Nothing.
I know.
Nothing at all.
What do you think? It can't get any weirder.
It's going to, trust me. Now, I said from the beginning, I thought the Democrats made a huge mistake by kicking Marjorie Taylor Greene off of her committees. Again, I would have loved to see her on the Education Committee. Reading her new Dr. Seuss book here, she writes in her Seussian little piece, I do not like your mental haze. I do not like your leftist ways. I do not like your son on blow. I don't like you, Mr. Joe. How clever. And the Democrats gave her nothing but time to do this. She got nothing else to do. I would have loved to have seen her read this on the Education Committee.
That's the thing about Marjorie Taylor Greene, is because she has no committee appointments. All she can do is really troll her office mates that are around her and put up random signs and protest flags and throw a big fit and write crap like this. And it's like, there are, the thing that I love about Dr. Seuss, actually read a really good biography on him, and because I have always loved him, obviously, as a kid. But he went through this whole series of doing World War II propaganda.
I have the book.
And it's so interesting, and it's incredibly racist. And one of the things that they talk about in the biography is, it's not exactly that he was trying to atone for that racism, or to try and nullify it somehow, because those cartoons are going to live forever. What he did do with stories like Horton Hears a Who and the Starbelly speeches is really try and instill in a whole generation, in several generations of young people, why being different is okay, why being the other is okay. Green Eggs and Ham is all about trying new things. The Places You'll Go is all about exploring the world, right? So all of these new liberal ideologies, these amazing things about equality and compassion, are now being pushed on Fox News, and I'm just like, yay.
Yeah.
Finally.
They're losing their mind over a publisher deciding not to publish 6 books, which is their choice, and I have no problem with that. I tweeted out the other day, I think, well, now that the Republicans have found Dr. Seuss, I think all school children should have to read the Lorax, and all Republican members of Congress too.
One of my favorite things about the Lorax, a lot of folks don't know this, in the 30s, after the Dust Bowl, one of the programs that FDR had, I think it was called the Citizen Conservation Corps, or something
CCC.
like that. Yeah, and people going all over the country planting trees, and which really has made a huge difference. I know, especially in Oklahoma, because if you are stripping the land over and over and over again, being able to hold the soil together is what stops another Dust Bowl from happening. And so these trees are really important. And so I love this idea of, the Republicans pushing Dr. Seuss, and it's like, let's bring back the CCC. Like, let's send some recently, graduated college kids who need jobs out there to just start planting a whole bunch of trees. It'd be awesome, and the country would be so beautiful.
Yep.
We could even plant fruit and nut trees so that homeless people could have better access to food, and put all kinds of stuff in national parks, and it'd be awesome.
You're such a hippie liberal.
I know, I'm just totally
Thinking about those homeless people. They should pull themselves up by their bootstraps. No, I mean, this is the sad thing, and I've talked about this as well. In fact, earlier I talked about Lewis Hines, who our government paid to go take photographs. That was his job. And, the reality is we need to be funding those things, because I go back and I look at the child labor photos that Hines took that were the impetus of changing child labor laws in this country. And we did that through our tax dollars. So for me, we can and we're going to debate over the next couple of days whether it's good to send money to here or there or everywhere. Look at me being Dr. Seuss. But we're going to debate this, and I'm going, I say we get it out there and we do, like you said, we should be hiring people to do all those things, which is why, again, I go back to, I've always been against handout programs. I've always been against welfare and food stamps and all that stuff. I want jobs programs, and I want people doing those kind of things and being able to follow their passions. We need people to do paintings and plant trees and all the things that aren't being done at this moment.
Yeah, and it's something where with the Dust Bowl, that cost the United States an absurd amount of money.
Yeah.
Not just in how they had to bail out families and farms and everybody else. It cost a lot of time and energy for farming communities, and what the government had to do to reestablish farms so that people could have food in the United States. So it's like we can either pay 3 times as much later whenever we create another Dust Bowl, or we can pay a little bit of money now for a bunch of college kids who want to have their loans, wiped clean to go plant some seeds. Like, which one is more economically, intelligent here?
Yep.
And you would think that the Republicans would be looking for that option instead of, when eventually they're going to have to come in and dump a whole bunch of money into, like infrastructure.
Yeah, it'd be great if Republicans actually had an ideology that they stuck to. But here again, during the Trump era, they have no platform, they have no policy, and we've seen no policy. This is my problem with Ron Johnson and the Senate Republicans, who haven't come out with an alternative plan. They really haven't said, this is what we're for. We know what they're against, everything, but they haven't said what they're for.
Yeah, and it seems like the one thing that they were for is getting rid of Obamacare, passing a big corporate tax cut for the rich, and that's really, and conservative judges. And so now I'm like, so you're just going to obstruct everything that happens in the House and the Senate. Why are you even there? Try and at least put forth something. I mean, there's got to be something that y'all could do that you could bring people together on. But I guess that would take too much effort, and Ron Johnson wouldn't get as much time on television talking about how he's the victim.
He's the victim. Oh, poor Ron Johnson. You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Sarah Burris, a reporter at Raw Story. Make sure you check out her work, rawstory.com. She does incredible stuff like this story on West Virginia. Is Jim Justice trying to make his way back to the Democratic Party somehow? Is he trying to position himself to be the new Trump? I saw him the other day talking about how right to work was bad for West Virginia and how going after prevailing wage was bad. Now he's going after Texas and their macho governor.
It's so interesting. I don't think that he's necessarily trying to be a Democrat. I think he's trying to kind of wiggle his way into creating his own kind of version of what he would want republicanism to be, like this idea of actual populism. And to be honest, like, his state is not in a happy place. Like, it's one of the poorest states in the country. It's getting some of the most money of any state in the country. It's like West Virginia and Mississippi and those folks who blue states are basically subsidizing. And so, I think that he's tried to do as much as he can for people. And I think he recognizes, when he talks to people like Joe Biden saying, dude, your state's looking rough. Please help me try and get Joe Manchin to support this bill. Otherwise, you guys are up a creek.
Yeah.
And so what has been interesting to watch is that he has, for a Republican, always he's tried to follow the idea of science, for the pandemic. And so whenever he instituted the mask mandate, he has stuck with it, unlike places like Alabama and Georgia and Texas, who abandoned the mask mandate and and randomly implement it. And so this week, whenever Texas decided that they're going to reopen everything 100%, Jim Justice was like, this is some macho posturing. And he actually called it politically correct. It was a politically correct decision, he said, which was such a funny trigger word for Republicans.
Nice. I like it.
But
it wasn't Alabama, it was Mississippi. Alabama actually extended theirs for one more month.
For one more month. And Mississippi and Texas, so that Oklahoma has already pretty much excused the mask mandate, but the cities, the municipalities are the ones that are enforcing it. What was interesting, though, there was an article that I didn't cover today in the Austin American Statesman that proposed that basically Abbott made this decision to reopen the state of Texas because people are still hacked off about the blackout. And so he wanted to do something that would either distract from it or make people happy again. And reopening the whole state is what he thinks that he can do to make it better. And it's like, well, now you're just going to kill everybody.
Yeah. Or he
So-
thinks that it was cold enough to freeze the virus out, and we froze the virus to death. Everything's fine.
Wouldn't it be nice if it really worked like that? The
You'd
winter
have to
would
get
been
really,
so much better.
I don't think I want to live to that level of cold. And finally, since we're talking governors, got to go to New York. Thoughts on the Cuomo governor? I'll tell you my thoughts from what I'm seeing. I don't like Cuomo. I've never liked Cuomo. I never was on the. He's a great governor during the pandemic thing. But I got to tell you, as a guy, and this might just be a guy thing. I don't think he should resign right now. If the investigation comes out and he's done horrible things, then absolutely he's got to go. But from what I've seen so far, asking someone to kiss them should not be something that gets you thrown to the curb, because it is what I'm teaching my kid. You should ask.
That was what I was going to say too, is the difference between a Democrat and a Republican is the Republican just grabs them by the you-know-what, and the Democrat at least asks first. So, that's pretty much all we got at this point. What is interesting, though, is the polling on this is pretty much exactly what you think about it. People appreciate what he did in the pandemic. They think he's done a fine job. They don't want him to run again.
And that's great. That's what voting is all about. And if he does run in 2022, they have the choice to not vote for him. But this idea that every time we turn around, and I know this is a Republican plant thing, much like the fake Dr. Seuss outrage, but I'm not biting. It's not happening.
Yeah, I think it is kind of this weird thing where they try and scoop up all of these conspiracy theories and these scandals for Democrats whenever they actually do get in power. And, I think here's the thing. It's like, it's like I said, it's just really serving as a greater contrast to what Republicans do and what Donald Trump, who he was, more than it's saying anything about Democrats.
Yeah.
Because again, Democrats operate differently. We do hold our party accountable. Obviously, Al Franken is gone.
Which I thought was a mistake.
Yeah, I did too. That was the thing that made me really sad. It's like the photo that he took he wasn't actually grabbing her. He was just being stupid in a photo.
Yep. And he was a comedian. There's a difference.
Yeah.
He's a comedian. That's a different, and that's a comedy troupe. That's a whole different world. And I don't know that we have the ability to really understand
differentiate.
That. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, look, if it comes out that Cuomo, she told him no, and that he was all ticked off, and somehow he harmed her career, or does, then absolutely you go after him. But from what I've heard so far, I don't know. I'm not there. Not there. Now, I'm not saying I won't get there if the Attorney General comes out with something, and there will be an investigation, as everyone is entitled to due process. But I'm not there yet.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting to see what kind of evidence comes out of the investigation. But I think, the good thing is she removed his hands exactly like she should have, and told him no.
Yeah, I mean, that's the right interaction. I mean, that's
he
one
didn't
of those.
Attack her.
But what I got thrown back at me is, well, he's in a position of power. And I'm like, okay, so should someone in any position of power never be allowed to date or ask anyone out or any of that? Now, look, again, if there was another part of this where he somehow caused negative consequences because of it, then absolutely you hammer the hell out of him. But if it ended right there and he just moved on to the next person, that's life.
I know, old man trying to go after a young woman. That's basically what we've had in the White House for the last 4 years.
There you go. And we'll end on that. Sarah, I appreciate the time as always. Good fun. You do great work over at Raw Story. I hope everyone checks it out, rawstory.com. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Have a good weekend.
You as well, our good friend Sarah Burris. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
This is happening much sooner rather than happening later this century. We're seeing it decades ahead of schedule.
The Gulf Stream is the weakest it's been in 1,000 years, and climate change is likely to blame. The COVID carbon rebound begins as global emissions rise, plus...
The Swedish brand says it's convinced no one will want a petrol engine by the end of the decade.
Volvo is the latest car maker to go all electric.
And they're going fast. All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Now, going electric is an expensive process for car makers, which have to totally rethink design and production.
Oh, really? You mean they can't just rethink where they're going to put new cup holders? Sad. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, there has been one and only one nice thing about COVID. The pollution has been way down, but now you say carbon emissions are on the way up?
Oh, yes. Now, 2020 marked the largest decline in global CO2 emissions in history, about 11% due to the coronavirus pandemic shutdowns slashing fossil fuel consumption. However, this week, the International Energy Agency warned that greenhouse gas emissions are already rebounding as economies slowly reopen. Now, this was predicted. China, India, and the United States remain top emitters, and the data shows that the U.S. still has the highest emissions per person by far. U.S. per capita emissions are twice that of folks in Germany and China, and 10 times higher per capita than India.
Even during the COVID crisis.
Yes.
Why am I not surprised?
The United Nations warned in a recent report that countries' pledges to cut their greenhouse gas emissions under the Paris Climate Agreement are far too low. Current pledges would deliver only a 1% reduction in global emissions by 2030, rather than the 45% reduction that scientists say is needed by 2030 to have a good shot at averting climate catastrophe. The Biden administration announced it will raise the U.S. climate emissions targets under the Paris Agreement. That's in advance of a virtual global summit with world leaders on Earth Day, April 22nd. Canada announced it will join the United States in increasing its own emissions targets.
Nice.
And it matters because new data indicates that the Gulf Stream in the Atlantic is now the weakest that it's been in 1,000 years, slowing down much earlier than previously projected. Man-made climate change is likely to blame. The Gulf Stream acts like a conveyor belt that transports warm water from the tropics north along the east coast and onto Europe, giving Europe its mild climate. A slowdown of the Gulf Stream would bring more severe heat waves and storms to Europe and the U.S., accelerate sea level rise in North America, and impact marine ecosystems and the ocean food supply. In an interview with the Green News Report, climate scientist Dr. Michael Mann explained.
This is happening much sooner rather than happening later this century. We're already seeing a substantial weakening of this current system that is unprecedented in 1,000 years. We're seeing it decades ahead of schedule. And that is likely because the Greenland ice sheet is beginning to disintegrate earlier than we expected, so that fresh water is running off into the North Atlantic earlier than expected, and that puts a cap on top of the ocean, which inhibits the sinking motion that drives that so-called conveyor belt. It's a reminder that uncertainty isn't our friend. In many respects, the impacts of climate change are now playing out sooner than we expected.
Oh, great.
Scientists warn that if governments fail to cut emissions, the Gulf Stream circulation may slow down by as much as 45% by the end of the century, which risks triggering extremely dangerous planetary tipping points. Scientists didn't expect this to happen until the end of the century. It's now happening decades earlier. But there is some good news.
Good.
At a virtual annual energy conference this week, Shell Oil CEO Ben Van Beerden said Shell Oil's production peaked in 2019, and they're diversifying into clean energy to meet Europe's target of net zero emissions by 2050.
Net zero is both, I think, a societal imperative. Therefore, you could argue a moral imperative for a company that wants to be on the right side of history. And it's an amazing business opportunity there.
Well, it's about time they get on the right side of history. Just a few decades late. but I'll take it.
Finally, Swedish carmaker Volvo is the latest carmaker to abandon fossil fuels, announcing it is ending production of all gasoline vehicles by 2030. By 2025, half of its sales will be electric cars and the other half hybrids, and it will sell only electric cars by 2030, much faster than other car makers. It also means Volvo will stop selling gasoline-only vehicles just 4 years from now.
I love it. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So some really good news, and we could use it. Evidently, 2 million people a day were vaccinating. And look, you know, the idea was to get to 1 million a day for the first 100 days. We're averaging 2 million people each and every day. This is, and again, they say, well, they picked it up. I'm going, this is fabulous. So we should blow through the 100 million in 100 days. And, you know, maybe we got a shot of by the end of May, having everyone who wants it actually vaccinated. I think it's a great thing, and here to share some thoughts on where we are, what's going on, and maybe to splash some cold water on my hope that maybe we're going to get through this sooner as opposed to later. I've asked our medical expert, Dr. Kelly Sennholz, to come share some thoughts. Dr. Sennholz, thanks for taking time for us.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I'm feeling a little bit better. I'm not overly optimistic, but I'm feeling some optimism.
Oh my gosh, it feels so good. I don't know about you, but my email and social media is filled with stories of joy, people getting their first vaccination and feeling safer. It's pretty wonderful.
It is. And then, you look at the good news that keeps coming out day after day, that we're getting it out. There's more production. We're doing smart things. I'm hearing stories from around the country where we're doing the things that we should have been doing months ago, setting up gymnasiums and getting it out to people. I'm thrilled.
I'm thrilled too. It's I want a little cold water and a little warm water.
Yeah, here we go. Here we go.
I know. But here's the thing. People want an easy answer. They're like, tell me what to do and I'll do it and let's get on. And I want it to be that easy too. And it could have been that easy had we done this a year ago. But this is going to be a path. What's happening right now in countries like Brazil and many countries around the world are getting infections with variants that are much more infectious than the regular virus. We're doing great with the vaccination, and if we can get a large percentage vaccinated by, let's say, even mid-April, we're going to have a pretty good cushion against these new variants. The key is going to be people must continue wearing masks. I believe it was the director of the CDC sent a message out today saying, we talked about this almost a year ago. Wearing masks is almost as good as being vaccinated. So if you're vaccinated and you're wearing a mask, you can cut the transmission. We got to cut the transmission, and then once we get it down to lower numbers, we can start doing the tracking and tracing that we should have been doing at the beginning and knock down any infections that happen, track their contacts, and contain the virus. I mean, that's what I'm saying about the up and down is, we're going in the right direction, and it is a joy. We're doing the right thing, but there are going to be some bumps along the road, and it'll go a lot smoother. We're going to have a better economic outcome, a better health outcome, if we just continue wearing masks and distancing for a little while longer.
Yeah. And if we could do away with Texas and Mississippi.
If we could, oh my God, yes. I cannot believe Governor Abbott did that.
Got to change the message, though.
That
I mean,
man.
He's getting beat up over the fact that the state froze, and he's got a big part of the responsibility of not ensuring that all that stuff was weatherized. His elbow he's elbow deep in the honey pot there, so he's got to do something to change the message.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my favorite hashtag lately is Republicans kill. Yeah. And I think it's a very accurate description of what they're doing. Every time you turn around, they're killing people. It's pretty amazing to watch. People in Texas seem to be pretty angry. Are you hearing the same thing?
Yeah.
I mean, they're saying, like, what are you doing? Our children are trying to go back to school. We're trying to run our businesses. We're trying to keep the infection down, and you're fighting us.
Yeah, my contacts in Texas are saying the same thing. They're also ticked that they froze, and that they didn't what I arguably was needlessly. There should have been, the last time you had the freeze like this, there should have been a movement to fix this. And it's not like this came out of the blue. It's not like no one knew. They knew. They just chose not to do anything about it.
And also, I think somebody needs to keep an eye on, like, the insurance bill from this little fiasco is going to be absolutely massive. There are people all over the state of Texas and in Mississippi who don't have water. We're the United States of America, and people don't have water. Think about the disabled people. Think about people stuck at home from COVID. They don't have water. It's just absolutely unbelievable. It's shocking and disgusting, and nobody should ever vote for another Republican again in their life. This is an unforgivable breach of the trust that we gave them.
Yeah, I mean, there's something seriously wrong with this. Now, let's talk a bit about so far the vaccinations that are happening. I mean, I'm happy to see we're up to 2 million. I'm happy to see that the Biden administration is doing the right thing, that we're finally getting the ball rolling, and I see only better things. Is there more that they could be doing at this moment, do you think?
There is, and I believe it's being done. One of the things is we need to vaccinate children. The studies that were done on adults, so we have kind of an interim okay to use these vaccinations, but they need to be tested in children, and I believe they are being tested right now. But what we're finding out, we used to think that children were not, they didn't get COVID as much, they didn't transmit it as much. We now know for sure that is absolutely not true, and in fact, they're much more likely to be asymptomatic with high viral loads, which of course is the worst case scenario. So integrating children into the COVID plan, we have a lot of children. They're a big percentage of our population. If we're going to knock this down, they're going to have to be vaccinated too. And I don't see that happening until maybe summer, hopefully summer, and we can get all the kids vaccinated. The good news is we have a lot of kids with diseases like asthma, et cetera, who are in schools with really poor ventilation. And hopefully part of the funds from the COVID bill are going to go towards improving ventilation in our schools and hopefully upgrading the facilities so these kids have a healthy place to work and learn and grow. So, health is going to improve overall because of COVID.
Yeah, I see this as an opportunity. I'm more positive than I've been in a while, in thinking that we can take the resources that we're putting out in this $1.9 trillion rescue plan and actually do some of the things like you're talking about. Because I have teachers who have told me that the districts are telling them well, just open the window. They're like, well, we can't open the window. Windows haven't opened in 100 years because things are so badly broken. And look, I mean, this is the problem we have with a lot of older schools, especially schools in high poverty areas.
– Yes, absolutely. We had in Colorado, 2 years ago, we had 1,000 kids with pneumonia. And now we have 1,000 kids with pneumonia. And 2 years ago, we had 1,000 kids with pneumonia. And now we have 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 I believe it was before Governor Hickenlooper, now Senator Hickenlooper, took office, they did a review of the schools. We had schools that had open holes in the ceilings, that had buckets on rainy days to collect the water. They were just absolutely deplorable situation. And our state took that information in and did something about it. And now I hope that on a national level, because we now have an excellent Democratic leadership, we can start moving forward on improving the infrastructure for our children. And in your prior guest talked about planting trees. I guess I'm a hippie child too, because not only are the trees going to be great for our, aesthetics, for global warming, but people would be shocked to know how many deaths occur per year around the world because of air pollution. Trees are going to improve our lives. They're going to improve our health, our environment. They're really important right now.
Yeah, no, we do. And look, I was one of those kids growing up in an inner city where didn't have an awful lot of trees. In a high pollution area, suffered horribly as a kid from asthma, and was allergic to everything. And the solution at the time, going to the welfare doctors that we went to, were to jab me with a needle to try and get me, to be immune to all of this stuff, and it just made me worse. As soon as I moved into an area where you didn't have the pollution, you didn't have the environment, all of that stuff went away.
And that's really a great example. When you do the worldwide stats, of course, in some countries like India or China, where the pollution is as thick as soup on many days, it's worse. But we have many thousands of deaths per year in the United States related to air pollution. So, and it's happening right now. This isn't out in the future kind of thing. It's happening right now, and the numbers are increasing as our pollution increases. So, I'm like you. I'm entirely hopeful right now. I get up every morning full of joy and just looking forward to what we can accomplish if we start working together. I totally agree with the idea of just ignore those crazy people and move ahead and get this stuff done.
No, we've got a lot to work.
Get the vaccine done, get the children vaccinated, get their schools put together properly, get our economy back on track. All of this is now hopeful.
No, I'm there with you. Two quick things. One, I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm not putting that vaccine in me." The Catholic Church has come out and said that don't use the certain one because it's used abortive tissue or whatever language that they're using. I think New Orleans was first, and now Pittsburgh has jumped. The Archdiocese of Pittsburgh has jumped on. Thoughts on that? I mean, any thoughts?
Yes. The people who are Catholic citizens in our country need to speak back against that fervently. You cannot just let that go by and let them do that. This is insane behavior. And it's definitely some of these, I hate, these older white guys who like it the way it was, and they love manipulating with the abortion issue. And people have got to demand that they stop that. If you don't want an abortion, don't have one.
Yep.
And let's move on and make the world a better place.
And also, if you want to stop abortions, how about educating people so that they don't get pregnant in the first place, or making Plan B or things like that available, so that you don't have to go through the end result. I mean, there are so many things we could do
again,
if we weren't idiotic about this.
Cut our abortion rate in half by offering free IUDs to girls.
Yeah.
In half. Like, that's how you stop abortion.
Yeah, well, you're giving them position. You're giving them permission. Then can't have that. No, bad. Finally, I wanted to get your thoughts on the big inauguration today.
Oh, I was going to say Happy Inauguration Day. I have been laughing all day long. I had a person just absolutely attack me about this, like, Trump is going to be back in on Thursday and you'll see. And I'm like, holy crap, these people are crazy. And I love how President Biden just went ahead with the meeting, and he's smiling and cheerful, and you know, we have the armed people outside protecting our Capitol. It's like, bring it on, baby, bring it on.
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake Democrats did in the House is take today off. I would have defiantly been there.
This is what I thought too. Although having just gone through a major trauma, I can cut them a little break on that. But yes,
Nope.
The appropriate thing would have been to show up anyway.
No, I mean, for me, it's being defiant. When did we start letting the terrorists win?
Hello, baby.
There you go. But Dr. Sennholz, I appreciate the time. I share the optimism. I share the hey, we still need to do the mask thing and all that. I'm there with you, but I'm feeling a little bit better, and I hope we'll talk again real soon, and hopefully we'll be a little bit happier and a little bit better down the road.
Right on. Have a wonderful evening.
You as well, our good friend Dr. Kelly Sennholz. Again, you know, she's right. Got to wear the mask. Got to protect ourselves. Sane, rational thought goes in with that. What's interesting is I talked to a doctor who we had him on a couple weeks ago. He was the one who had that great thread about the neo-Nazi who came in with the Nazi tattoos and the swastikas and the white supremacist stuff all over him, you know, gasping and, you know, dying, literally dying because he couldn't get air because he had COVID. And that he, a Jewish doctor, an African-American nurse, and an Asian respiratory therapist, I guess he was, you know, were there to take care of him. And it sounds like, you know, one of those bad jokes, but that was reality. And, you know, one of the things that he said in the interview, outside of the fact that they actually took care of that guy, they're better people than I am, is that, you know, by wearing the mask for the first time in his entire career, he hasn't been sick. And he's saying, look, you know, by not transmitting this stuff, he said, I'm probably going to wear a mask to work for the rest of my career. I said, I'm probably never going to not have it. Which I think is telling, because there's been some information that the flu, not to be confused with COVID, has basically disappeared. Now, there's a couple of thoughts. First thought is that COVID killed the flu, which, you know, some scientists will make that argument. But other people are saying, look, it's because it's not being transmitted. And the flu is much harder to transmit than the COVID, I guess, from what I'm being told. And we have kind of immunity somewhat to it as well. But that by wearing the mask, we've killed it. It'll be back, trust me. But the point is, it's wearing that stupid thing we all hate. But it's good for us. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1914. That was the day that President Woodrow Wilson signed the Seamen's Act into law. The act was in part a response to the tragic sinking of the Titanic. The International Seamen's Union was demanding changes to the working conditions at sea. The job of a seaman required long times away from home and tough physical labor. The workers had few rights. The union found a friend in Senator Robert La Follette of Wisconsin. He championed a new law that set guidelines for basic safety and decent working conditions for those who sailed under the American flag. The act set the work week at a maximum of 56 hours. It established holidays for non-essential crew. The law also improved working conditions by setting standards for cleanliness and safety on board. It abolished the practice of jailing seamen that tried to desert the ship. It required that seamen be paid half of their wages during the voyage. The practice had been to withhold wages to ensure the workers did not desert the ships at port. The new law also required that 16 square feet of space be given to each worker for sleeping. It also mandated that ships should have adequate lifeboats. These last two provisions angered the ship owners because it meant there would be less space on board for cargo. Finally, the law gave seamen the right to organize into unions. Senator La Follette described the negative reaction of the owners to his law by observing, already the masters of the seas are beginning to threaten dire vengeance. The act was a major victory for the rights of labor on the high seas. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I found it interesting on my Twitter feed, a couple of interesting Susian comments in response to Marjorie Taylor Greene's. Look, she's got nothing better to do, and I said this from the beginning. They should have never taken her off the committees. She's gonna provide so much entertainment and insanity and points. You know, like my son always says, not that they're useless. They serve as a bad example. But one of the responses was, insane you are and stupid too, without any redeeming qualities. You are wasted flesh, a useless eater. You are nothing but a bottom feeder. So unlike Katniss, who the berries didn't eat, stuff your face with them, and we'll cheer as you eat them. There's that one. And then my favorite, I do not like you, MTG. Actually, I loathe you, don't you see? Your brain is slush, your personality is nil, and all there is empty space between your ears. So there you go. It's not my writing. I give credit to the listeners. Good for you. And this is the kind of stuff that Marjorie Taylor Greene could have brought to Congress. So congratulations, Democrats. You saved the Republicans the embarrassment of that woman reading that in Congress. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't other ones, because there are a ton of Republicans who had their positions. And I find it interesting that Republicans are now promoting reading, and that's a good thing. Fox News promoting reading to their viewers, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's a really good thing for those folks to read the Dr. Seuss books, and not the racist ones. Look, I've looked at those, and you go, those were stereotypical images of that era. I don't have a problem with those going away. Even as a kid, you go, that's weird. And you think about the training and the indoctrination that goes with it. I don't have a problem with it. Joe Biden didn't do this. This was the company who said, we're going to voluntarily step away from them. Not the whole catalog, just the 6 books. But we'll see. Good news on the Stephen Donziger front. I gotta get this out quick. You remember we had Stephen Donziger on the other night, and he was talking about, he's the environmental attorney who sued Texaco in Ecuador, won a huge settlement, and then Chevron/Texaco came after him in the U.S. He's been under house arrest for more than 500 days as a federal judge, ruled him in contempt of court. Well, today, as the headline reads, Donziger won an extraordinary victory over Chevron in our federal courts. The judge overruled, I guess, some of the major parts of the allegations against him, and a dismissal of the criminal contempt charges against Stephen Donziger. That's gonna get him out of jail. That's gonna get him out of the house arrest, and rightly so. Now, I'm sure they're going to continue to fight and demonize this guy, but this guy is a hero, and someone who, these are what he has done is nothing short of incredible and Herculean, to take on a global behemoth and actually win. So good on him, and good on the folks that pushed this. But more importantly, good for the rest of us, because you can't let this happen to Stephen Donziger. Because who's going to be the next person like him to stand up and take on these big behemoths? Who's going to be the next one to take these cases and be willing to spend, what's it been, 20, 25, 28 years now that he's been fighting this case? His entire, adult career. just to get people some justice, just so get that they'll clean Texaco or Chevron will clean up the mess that they made, so kids don't die of leukemia and families don't have have to deal with an environment that's just destroyed in Ecuador and around the world. Good on him. Good stuff today. Very happy with that. And finally, California, the person that was nicknamed the I-5 Strangler. This is kind of one of those poetic justice moments, and I just found it. I found it ironic. I found it interesting and funny. Evidently, he was found dead. Someone had strangled him. That's the punchline. So the I-5 Strangler strangled, and goodbye. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you're going. As always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you check out the new updated website, thericksmithshow.com. Great stuff. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.